In this video, I am going to show you how to read all your SMS messages from your phone, including SMS that you have sent to other people as well. So let's get started. Okay, so before we start with the code, let me first show you how this demo project is structured. So in our Gradle build file, we have two important dependencies. The first one is a permissions, a company's permissions, which will allow us to basically request a runtime permission for reading the SMS. And here I have a compose navigation dependency to basically navigate between two different screens in this demo project. And other different dependencies are here by default. Anyhow, in our Android manifest file, we need to add here one permission. So let's just here specify a read SMS permission. And after we type that, we're going to see here a warning. And if we press Alt plus Enter, then we're going to have here an option to add one more additional tag. We can specify here true. Or you can specify false, it's your choice. Anyhow, we need to use this uses feature tag because it will specify whether this feature is required for this application, and a default value is true. So when this value is true, it means that the application requires this feature and does not want to be installed on devices that don't support it. And if you set here this value to false, then this will not impose a restriction or on where the application can be installed. In my case, I want this application to be installed only on devices that do actually contain this hardware for reading and interacting with the telephony. Okay, so after that permission, we can close that. Let me just show you here also what kind of files I have prepared. So here I have only two screens, permission screen and the main screen. We also have a navigation graph that contains two different destinations, permission screen and the main screen. So after a permission is granted in this permission screen, then we are navigating to our main screen where we are displaying all those messages or SMS. Okay, that's our navigation graph. Let's now open up the permission screen. So here we are basically just requesting that permission in the runtime. So we have only two composables, text and a button. The text will say that this permission is actually required for this application to work. And when we click this button, then we're going to launch and actually request this permission at the runtime. So that's our permission screen. Here in our main activity, we have just this setup nav graph function, which basically does set up our navigation. And here we have two components, a message view and a sender view. A message view will basically just represent that message bubble that will contain the actual message text and the actual timestamp or hours and the minutes when that actual SMS was sent or received. As you can see here, at the top, I'm using a row, and the reason why I'm using here a row is because that each SMS that we are going to retrieve from our database, from our Android device, can have a different type. So in this case, I'm checking whether this message or SMS type is equal to 1. In that case, it means that we are actually fetching a SMS that was received. And if that value is different, then we are specifying this message bubble on the right side of our screen. So if our message has been received, so if the type is equal to number 1, then this whole message bubble will be located on the left side of our screen. And otherwise, if that message type is different from number 1, in this case, it will mean that our message is actually sent, and in that case, that message bubble will be located on the right side of our screen. So here I have asked a ChatGPT to give me the association of each and every number with different types of SMS messages. So in this case, if we receive a type of number 1, it means that that message is actually received. If we receive number 2, then it means that that message has actually been sent from our side. And we have other different types as well. In this case, we're going to use only those two. So I'm going to read received messages and the send messages, which is why here I'm checking whether that type is equal to number 1 or not. So if it is equal to number 1, it means that that message is actually received. And in that case, we are displaying that chat message or a message bubble on the left side. Otherwise, if we are sending the message, we are displaying that message on the right side. So as simple as that. And each and every message bubble will contain a maximum width of 0.7f or 70% of the full width. And that's how this message view will actually look like. Here we also have a sender view, which will basically just display a simple text on the center, and this text will show a sender ID or a sender number to which we are actually communicating, or the actual number or the sender ID from which we have received a message. Okay, so that's all about those components. And now basically I'm going to open up the main screen, and here we're going to write the code to actually fetch those received and sent messages and actually display them on our main screen. So the first thing I'm going to create here one function named read messages. And this function will take the context as a parameter. There you go. And this second parameter will present a type that can be, in this case, either inbox or sent. So whether we are reading messages that are actually received or sent. So we're going to basically here allow this function to choose what kind of messages we want to fetch and read from our Android device. So the next thing I'm going to create here one mutable list, which will be called a message or messages actually. Let's call here mutable list of. And as a value, I'm going to specify here one custom model class that I have already created. So SMS message, this one. And as you can see, that custom data class will contain a couple of different parameters or properties that we are going to fetch from each and every message. Like the actual message body, the sender ID, which is the number from which we are receiving the messages, or the number to which we are sending the message. The next one is a date. The next one is a read, so whether this message was read or not. The actual type, so whether this message has been received or sent. Next here we have a thread that basically represents an integer value that will be used to group or associate multiple different messages inside a single conversation. So for example, each and every message will have one unique thread number, and if multiple different messages contain the same thread ID, it means that they belong to the same conversation. And finally, we have a service, which basically represents a number or a value that is used to actually identify a mobile operator from the actual sender. So you will see about that. Anyhow, some of those values we're not going to use directly in this demo application, like this service, so I'm not going to actually display this value or this red. So anyhow, you can use those two values as well. And here I have prepared one extension function, parse date, which will be used to actually parse this date from a long value to a human readable value that will be split as a date and time. Okay. There you go, and now let's continue from our main screen. So this read messages function. The next thing I'm going to create here a cursor value. I'm going to call here the context in order to get the content resolver. So content resolver. So this content resolver is basically used as a bridge from our application to the underlying database in our Android system that will allow us to access some data from a different kind of content providers. Anyhow, here I'm going to query this content resolver, and I'm going to specify a specific URI. So let's call here URI.parse. And as a URI string, I'm going to specify here content, then a colon, two slashes, SMS, and here I'm going to link this type. So this type will be either inbox or a send. I'm going to pass that value dynamically from the main screen, so you will see about that. And here we also need to specify some other different parameters. I'm going to add here a null, so 4 times. And now that we have created this cursor object, now we're going to go to this cursor and fetch that actual data from this content provider of SMS. So let's here type a cursor.use, and I'm going to create here multiple different variables to actually get the index value of each and every column from this content resolver in order to get the right data. So the first one will be index message. I'm going to call here it.getColumnIndex, and here I'm going to specify a body. So the body will basically allow us to get the actual message from each and every SMS. The next one will be index sender, and here the actual value is called the address. The next one is called a date. Here just type the date, there you go. The next one will be a read, so whether this value has been read or not. The next one will be type, so the actual type of this message. The next one will be thread, so the actual thread ID of the conversation from each and every message. And finally, I'm going to add here a service, so service center. Also here we need to add a thread ID, so that's the actual value that is used as a name of each and every column from this SMS content resolver. And now that we have fetched all those index value of each and every column, I'm going to down below call a while loop. So I'm going to say while it moves to next is true. So now in this while loop, we're going to basically go through each and every SMS message, and we're going to add that message to our mutable list. So let's just here call messages.add, and here I'm going to call SMS message model class, and I'm going to specify here all those properties. So the first one is a message. Let's specify here it, so the cursor.get a string to get that actual message. So just call here index message. There you go. The next one is a sender. So it.get a string, index sender. The next one is a date. So it.get a long in this case. So index date. Let's now call here read. So it.get a string index read. We can convert this to a boolean value actually. The next one is here a type. So let's just call here get integer, because a type is actually an integer value. So it can be either 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, I think. Let's now here specify index type. Let's specify here the thread. So get int as well, because the thread is also an integer value. So index thread, and a service as well. So get a string index service. Alright, so after we go through each and every SMS from the underlying data source of this content provider, then we want to return this whole list. So let's just here specify a list of SMS message, and we're going to return this messages value after this while loop. So return messages. We also need to return that actually after this cursor, so there you go. After we go through each and every SMS from this content provider, we are adding each and every message to this list, and we are at the end returning this whole list that will contain all those messages. And now finally let's continue by creating our main screen. So the first thing I'm going to create here the context, so let's call here a local context.current. And I'm going to create here one more variable that will hold all different messages. So all messages by remember. I'm going to here call mutable state map of, because this will be actually a map, since our lazy column will contain a sticky header as well as those messages bubbles. Here the type will be as a key, the key will be a string value, and as a value I'm going to add here a list of SMS message. Now after that I'm going to add here one launched effect, so that we can actually trigger that read messages function. So I'm going to add here a unit, so that this block inside this launched effect will be triggered only once we enter the composition. Let's now create here one variable, messages, and I'm going to call here read messages. So that's our function. For the context I'm going to specify of course the context. And as a type here, I'm going to specify inbox. So that's the first type of messages that we want to fetch. So all those messages that are actually received from other different people. And here I'm going to add a plus sign and call this read messages function one more time. Let's just pass here the context, and the second parameter here will be a different type that will be actually sent. Which means that here in this messages variable, I want to hold all those messages that are actually received. So all those messages that are located in this inbox part of our content provider, and all those messages that are actually sent, so that we can actually combine those two SMS messages in each and every chat conversation. Okay. So now below that I'm going to call here this all messages value. So this is actually a map. And here I'm going to say plus equal, because I'm going to add basically all those values in this new map. So I'm going to say here messages dot sorted by, and I want to sort all those messages that we are actually fetching from our content resolver by a date. Okay, so here I want to sort basically all those messages by a date, and I want to group them and convert this actual list into a map. So that map value will actually be a string value, and that string value will represent a sender. So let's here type it.sender. Okay, and now basically this all messages value will contain the key, which will be a sender value from each and every SMS, and the actual value will be a list of messages. So in this case, what we have done here, we have created here one map that will map each and every sender with multiple different SMS messages, okay? And that's how we're going to create basically a conversation view in our application that will be easier to view and read, okay? Alright, and down below, let's now finally go with a lazy column. So let's here call a lazy column to create that view in which we're going to display all those values. So I'm going to just here add a modifier first. So a modifier, let's fill the maximum size actually, so fill maximum size. And here I'm going to add a background color, there you go. And now within this lazy column, I'm going to call this all messages map. And I'm going to here say for each and every map in this, or for each and every pair in this map, let's just here specify a sender. So that's the key, and the value is the actual SMS, or multiple different SMSs. So I'm going to here type messages. There you go. And now for each and every pair inside this map, I'm going to first create a sticky header. So let's call here a sticky header function. As a key here, I'm going to add, of course, the sender. So sender, and as a value, I'm going to call here this sender view composable function, and I'm going to just pass this sender. Perfect, we just need to add here experimental annotation, there you go. So now with this sticky header, we are able to display all those sender IDs or sender numbers on the center of our screen. And below each and every sticky header, we're going to now add that message view or a message bubble for each and every message in this pair, okay? So let's just here call messages, and first I want to group now actually all those messages by a date. So in this case I'm going to just specify date dot parse the date, because I don't want to group now those messages by the actual date or this long value. Instead I want to group those messages by the parse date that will contain the value only of our actual date. So I'm going to explain that a little bit later. Let me just here finish all of this. So I'm going to call here split by an empty space, and I'm going to get here the first value from that result. There you go. And after this group, I'm going to call for each function. And here I'm going to also specify actually values in this map. So date and SMS message. There you go. And in this for each loop, first I'm going to call item function to specify the actual date from which we are grouping, of course, those messages. So I'm going to just call here a simple text. The text will be the date, of course. Let's specify some additional parameters here as well, like the actual modifier. So fill maximum width, and alpha value to be maybe 0.38, so less visible. The next thing here will be a text alignment, so text align on the center. Font size will be different, so material theme, typography, body small font size. And the color here will also be a difference, so material theme color schema dot on surface. Perfect. And after this date text value, for which we are grouping basically those SMS messages, after that I'm going to add here items function and specify all those other different messages. So let's just here call and specify those items. So SMS messages. As a key here I'm going to specify it.date. And finally let's call here a message view and specify the actual SMS message. Okay, so I know that this was a lot of information to process at the beginning, and that's why I'm going to now actually launch this application and show you how all of that is combined in order to properly parse all those messages in our application. Okay, so now let's launch this application. Alright, so the first thing that you're going to see here is our permission screen, okay? So this is the actual permission, so we have a simple text and a button. So whenever we press this button, we're going to request a runtime permission. So let's just press here a request permission. There you go. And if we grant this permission, then this block right here will be triggered, and we are going to basically navigate to our main screen, okay? So now let's just press allow, and we should be able to get to our main screen. Okay, so we have received here one error. Let me just check and see what it's all about. Null pointer exceptions, so index service. Okay, so this index service value can actually be null, because if we are getting this index service from the type of ascent, then in that case that value can actually be null. And in that case I'm going to also specify here just an empty string. Let's just actually pass that right here. Okay, and now let's launch this application once again. Okay, perfect. And now, as you can see, I'm able to see the actual messages from my own device. So at the top here we have, of course, one sticky header. So that sticky header will contain the information of the actual sender. So the actual number from which we have received a message. And on the left side here of this screen, we can see all those messages that are actually received, and the messages on the right are the messages that we have sent by ourselves. Okay, so as you can see, each and every message here will of course be grouped by that date. So let me just here open that screen and show you. So as you can see here, we are creating a for each loop for each and every pair in this all messages value. And in this sticky header, we are displaying the actual sender. Okay, so the sticky header will be the sender value, which is this a number that you can see on the top here. And after this sticky header, we are displaying those messages. So first, here I'm calling a group by function to group all those messages by that date string value, which we are converting into a day, month, and a year. And the reason for that is because that here, as you can see, we don't want to display this date value before each and every chat bubble message. We want to group all those messages and display that date only once if multiple different messages are sent in the same date or received in the same date. And of course, down below I can also scroll and see some other different conversations that I have fetched from the content provider. As you can see here, let me just scroll all the way down as well. So the last conversation that I have here on my phone is actually this one. So we can see the actual sender number on the top. There you go. We can see that date string value, and all those messages here on the left side are actually received. So we have received those messages and we have grouped them by this parse date. So bottom line, that's how you can easily create your own application to actually read those SMS messages. Now, of course, in this case, I have stored all those different conversations in a one screen, but of course, you can split that and basically open a single conversation in this screen and not display them at once. So it's your choice. Anyhow, this was just a demo project, and I'm going to also put a source code of this project in the description of this video, so you can check that out as well. Also, be sure to comment down below and let me know what you think about this approach of receiving SMS messages and reading them in your own application. And of course, be sure to like this video, but only if you find it helpful. For this video, that will be all.